Hey folks, Bob here from Florida Cam Courses with another edition of Chat with a Cam. Our guest today is Mike D'Ambra of Green Island Pest Control, and we're hoping to get some great advice on fertilizer and pest control best practices. Mike, welcome and thanks for taking the time to speak with our viewers today.
Thanks for having me.
Not a problem. We've been looking forward to this conversation for a long time. Mike, how long have you been working in the landscape business?
About 15 years.
Wow, that's a long time. When did you decide to start your own landscape company?
It's been about 4 years ago now.
And have there been any challenges to that?
Not really. No, it's taken off pretty good.
Great. So, for our viewers, we're going to be talking a little bit about best practices of pest control and fertilization. But we can all come to understand that soil generally provides most of the nutrients our plants need. There are times when fertilizers can help, and I would assume fertilizers contain one or more essential plant nutrients and can be applied to landscapes to improve plant quality and growth, or to correct that nutrient deficiency. So, Mike, my question to you is how can property managers know if plant or soil has a nutrient deficiency?
Well, that's a great question, Bob. It generally is going to be the appearance of the turf or the plant is going to show, maybe veins through the plant or various things are going to tip you off to as there's an issue.
And does the pest control or fertilization contractor perform soil tests to see if there's a deficiency in nutrients, or is that something that property managers should do?
We typically do that. We have a distributor that we work with that will pull as many soil or tissue analysis as we need. If there are certain products that are not working the way we anticipate or expect them to, often we'll have to pull tests to see what's going on in the soil.
And does that happen on occasion that things don't perform the way you expect? Is that due to environmental issues?
It does. There's so many different microclimates in Florida that different properties are going to respond differently to different applications and also the time of year.
And I'm sure this isn't a short answer, but can you give our viewers a little insight in how, as a professional, you develop a fertilization and pest control plan for condo and HOA communities, or private houses for that matter? What's step 1, 2, 3?
Well, years of experience helps. And then we also have a lot of resources at our disposal, whether it be University of Florida. Some of the distributors we use, they have PhDs on staff. So and of course the climate's always changing. So we're constantly trying to change our program based on the climate and based on the results we're seeing.
And we talked about best practices in the opening. Who creates these best practices? Is it industry standard, University of Florida? Where do the best practices come from?
Generally, it will all kind of stem off of University of Florida and the research they've done, and then our industry will come together and develop plans based on insect pressure, fertility requirements, etc.
So, like any other professional group, you have a national and a local organization where you guys all get together and
We do.
talk about stuff.
Yeah, there's Florida Pest Management Association as well as National Pest Management Association. So we do try to all abide by certain, ethical standards, etc. Yes, sir.
And you are licensed to apply the. Do you have to be licensed? I guess is a bit better question.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to have a certain number of years, a certain number of jobs under your belt in order to get that license. And then there's certain testing involved, and of course, continuing education, annually.
And we've always been told that our maintenance people in our properties are not allowed to apply Roundup. Is Roundup a controlled substance commercially?
It is now. It never used to be. Now there is a limited certification that you have to apply to in order to technically legally apply it. Yes.
Is it hard to get that certification? Would
It
you
is not.
recommend property managers send their maintenance people out for that?
I think to abide by legal standards, absolutely. It is not a hard license to attain. It's a lot of common sense stuff, but then again, common sense nowadays isn't always an easy thing.
So you don't go spraying it when the wind is blowing at 40 miles an hour?
Correct, or when it's going to dump an inch of rain like in an hour, you know.
Well, what about Amdro? Does that apply to maintenance people too? Is that a substance that they should not be applying in a condo or an HOA?
No, that is not a regulated material. You can purchase that at Home Depot. There are a lot of materials out there that you could apply. I mean, I think professionally, when applying certain materials, we should be trained professionals to apply that. So I always err on the side of use the professional in these matters. You know, give the professional a call and let whoever, you know, do what they're best at.
Well, we're joined by Chase. He wanted to come in and find out if pesticides are safe for dogs. But before we get to that, in many counties, Mike, there's restrictions, usually beginning in late spring around now, regarding the application of certain fertilizers. Why is that? Well, it seems like when we need it the most, we can't apply it.
Yeah, that's true. A lot of people are concerned about the environment and nutrients leaching into our waterways. So June 1st through September 31st in Indian River County specifically, there is an ordinance where you can't apply nitrogen or phosphorus specifically.
And is that because it creates these algae blooms we've heard about, or is there any data backing this up?
Well, to a degree there is. University of Florida just got done doing a 7-year study that shows that when properly applied, less than 1% leaches. I believe the majority of the issues are septic and some other various, you know, things like Lake Okeechobee and stuff like that. But, you know, when applied right, when the spreaders are calibrated correctly and you're staying away from waterways, et cetera, you're not going to have too much of that leaching.
And all of this best practices involves communication with the various contractors. I would imagine that you're very close to irrigation contractors. I would think that that's important, that you guys be on the same page, or even the landscaper. In fact, does Green Island do landscaping, or do they just do pest control and fertilization?
We do not do any landscaping. We are just strictly a pest control company. We do work very well hand in hand with several landscapers and irrigation contractors. They're so important. You know, all three work well together. If the grass isn't being cut at the right height, or dull blades, for instance, or if the grass isn't getting the water it needs, or the plants aren't being trimmed a certain way, the products aren't going to work the way you always anticipate them to.
And I assume there's certain times a year where the mower blades actually have to be disinfected to not spread a fungus, for instance, from one property to another. Do you catch that, or is that somebody else's job?
To a degree, like in the summer we have a fungus in the winter we have a fungus that occurs, and ideally if a landscaper's mowing that property, they should be disinfecting the blades. Not always does it happen, so we have to, you know, rely on product application to slow that spread of that disease down.
That's brown patch fungus.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
That's pretty tough to...
It is. It's a challenge. It's definitely a challenge.
And I assume you also work with the various lake contractors for water quality.
Not so much. They're kind of a separate animal altogether, and they're generally contracted by the board, and they are definitely a specific industry as a whole.
Well, how far back do you stay away from their body of water?
Technically, we're about 10 feet away when applying granular, and about 6 feet away when we're doing a liquid application.
Wow, that's a great explanation of how everything interconnects. But in light of these restrictions that we just talked about, is there any reason why a contractor or association committee can't use organic soil amendments or just to improve the soil quality without going through a fertilization program? Is there such a thing as organic amendments to the soil?
Yes and no. It's a bit of a loaded question. Organics, for instance, Milorganite, does contain nitrogen and phosphorus. It's a 620, so we're not legally able to apply that during the ordinance in the summer. So, and then some other organics, most of them have nitrogen and phosphorus in them. And even if they didn't, the cost, often budgetary restrictions don't really allow us to apply them in most applications.
Well, Mike, you mentioned 620 in that chemical that you just brought up. We see this all the time when we go to the big box stores and we see the various types of fertilizer. What are all those zeros or numbers? What do they all mean the same thing at the same time? Just educate us as to what 620 would mean to me.
They do. On every bag of fertilizer, you've got a 50-pound bag of fertilizer, a 30-pound bag. There's going to be 3 numbers associated with that bag, and the first number is your nitrogen content. Your middle number is going to be your phosphorus, and the last number is going to be your potassium or potash. And that number directly correlates with the percentage that's in the bag. So if it's a 620, it's 6% nitrogen, 2% phosphorus, and 0% potash.
Or phosphorus.
Phosphorus is the middle number.
Middle number.
Mm-hmm.
So it's nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium.
Mm-hmm.
And certain plants need a higher level of potassium, I take it?
Yeah, blooming plants like potassium a lot, as well as phosphorus.
Like hibiscus.
Mm-hmm.
So if I was looking for a fertilizer for hibiscus or ixora, a flowering plant like that, I would look for lower nitrogen and more phosphorus and potassium.
Yeah, ideally, or just a complete, like a 5-5-5, for instance. But you don't want to put too much nitrogen down on plants because it just causes a lot of growth and not as much blooms.
So nitrogen is where the growth is in turf and in plants and shrubs?
That's correct.
Wow. I told you we would learn more than you ever wanted to know. We see a growing number of residents, Mike, that are concerned that the pest control contractors are applying things that are either dangerous to their pets or their children, or perhaps they have an allergy to that. Obviously, these concerns could be real. I can remember a chemical called chloridane from 25, 30 years ago that worked really well but was found to cause sickness in people. So how do you deal with a client who says, I really don't want you to apply certain chemicals to my lot, or an association that says we want to be, totally green and not have any chemicals on our property? Is it possible, or is it true?
Well, I've run experiments over the years as far as organic materials go, referencing pesticides specifically, and we're using extremely low toxicity products, and I think it's just always communicating with the client what you're doing and when, and trying to explain to them what you're using, and always keep the pets off for an hour or two. That's important. If they know when you're coming, and whether it be to water it in afterwards or wait a certain amount of time to water it in, long as most of the products have just a little bit of time to dry, I found that pets tend to be completely okay. I've never had an issue in all the years I've been doing this. So.
And in some cases, I would imagine the chemicals under your kitchen sink are probably more dangerous than the stuff that a licensed pest control operator is putting down.
That's 100% accurate. Most products like Clorox cleanup, for instance, or a lot of the cleaners you use are going to have a warning label on the side of the bottle. Everything we use is going to be a caution label. So they're much, much less toxic.
Wow, there's so much to know, but the short story here is that when it comes to protecting the investment that the association or the homeowner has made in millions or thousands of dollars of landscaping, you want to have a professional overseeing these things. There's just too much to know, and as community managers, It's just not our thing. As a hobby, sure, that's great. But when it comes down to actually protecting and having someone be responsible for the health and beauty of these plants, hire a professional. Beyond that, that's all we have time for this time, folks. We want to thank Mike for a very informative session. Again, he's with Green Island Pest Control. And once this video is over, we will have the links to Green Island. What is the website, Mike?
It's greenislandpest.com.
greenislandpest.com, or you can give them a call at 772-766-0622 and ask Mike to come down and check out your shrubs. There'll be plenty of links, like I said, at the end of our show, and check out our Facebook page because that's where we're going to put them. Thanks for watching. Unfortunately, Chase has taken a nap now, so I can't bring him back for you. But let's get growing. Be well.